Hey, everybody, welcome once again to another edition of the Wrestling with Reality podcast. My name is Kris Kloss, alongside, of course, always is Eric Melikian. And our guest this episode is a guy that I personally go way back with. He is a staple in Southern California professional wrestling, and then some. Not only professional wrestling, he is the owner of the John De La O Jiu Jitsu Training Center that is located down in the OC. That is in Orange County. Speaking of the OC, he is the owner and operator of OCCW. You see the banners right there, Orange County Championship Wrestling. Our guest this time, this edition of the Wrestling with Reality podcast, welcome John De La O to the show.
Hey, guys, how's it going? Eric, Kris?
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a podcast myself for a while. I know how difficult it is to get guests to show up on time when they say they will. So it meant a lot to me that you asked, so did my best to be here on time. And, I am not a good purveyor of technology. Like my cell phone, this is the first phone I've had that didn't flip open with little buttons to push. So you wouldn't have been able to get me 6 months ago.
Wow.
Well, technology's changing by the day, so in 6 months, this probably will be obsolete too.
Fair enough. That's why I don't even bother to pick it up.
By the hour.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, I'll let you lead in, but yeah, man, this is going to be good. John, like I said, John and I, we crossed paths, met years ago, and then we kind of took different paths. And now, like we were talking last night, my friend, it's kind of become full circle because I've been involved lately in OCCW quite regularly. We just had a show last night, a great show. I mean, really good show, great matches. And then we're going to have another one next week, so we can talk about that. But yeah, our paths, but really this is about your path today, John. And yeah, Eric, if you want to go to the next question or take it from here, if you will.
Absolutely. John, tell us how you broke into the professional wrestling business and how your journey started with all this.
Okay, well, how my journey started, right? This was the early 80s, I want to say 81, 82. I'm flipping through the channels one day. I'm too old for cartoons, right? I'm 11, I'm 12, right? I don't watch cartoons anymore. And then on one Saturday morning at 9:30 on KHJ Channel 9, Championship Wrestling with Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson, right? The WWF. And from that moment on, I was like, what? Couldn't stop. Could not stop. I was hooked from the first guy I saw was Sergeant Slaughter, and the first guy I took as my favorite wrestler was Rocky Johnson. And so I'd always had wrestling in my mind. It had always been, I didn't want to be like Mike, right? I didn't try to emulate any of the typical athletes of the day. I wanted to be like Tito Santana. I wanted to be like Terry Von Erich. I wanted to be like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And in my teen years and my adult years, I'd always followed wrestling. It took a backseat to women and martial arts. I started fighting in my early 20s. Around the time, a couple years after the first UFC, I started competing in cage fights or ring fights or what we called no holds barred. It hadn't been called MMA yet. But I always watched wrestling, always followed wrestling. I actually paid pay-per-views. I would go see the NWA when it would come out here. I rarely went to WWF, right? I didn't. Before the Monday Night Wars, it didn't interest me to cartoon. But one day I was at when Anaheim, before the Pond, it was the
Convention Center.
The Anaheim Convention Center, right? And
yeah.
I handed me a flyer for a show in Echo Park. And that's not too far away. Back then, Orange County and LA were very different places. And I'm like, SCCW, Southern California Championship Wrestling. And I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. I'm going to check that out. And along that same time, there was this when you had cable back then, you had these channels. Like if you didn't have a channel that you were subscribed to, let's say HBO was on channel 56, but you didn't subscribe to HBO, you could turn to channel 56, and they would have like cable radio, like which were specialized broadcasts of whatever, cable casts of whatever, food, politics.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one called Wrestle Talk, and that was with Dynamite D. And
Yes.
I just found it one day, and so I would put it on when I was washing dishes or doing some menial tasks other than watching TV, and I would listen to it called in a few times. And so when I got this flyer at the WWF show and SCCW, and then on the back of the flyer there was a wrestling school led by Dynamite D. And I'm like, well, I want to go to the show, and I'm gonna go and maybe check out Dynamite D, right? So I go to the show, canceled. It didn't happen. I was like, oh well, all right. So then this was up in Simi Valley, the first wrestling school. Dynamite D led it, and Samoan Kid, Oscar, I think his name was.
Yep.
You guys remember Samoan Kid?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Jack Stud, Red, Cincinnati Red was there, and so I learned to take my bumps and hit the ropes the first day. I couldn't believe I was actually learning to wrestle. I was under no pretenses that that it was the legitimacy of the sport never came into mind. I didn't need to learn any secrets. I just wanted to learn how to do it, and I had no delusions of becoming famous. This is something I wanted to do and do at the level I'm doing it now. Right? I didn't realize there was indie shows in California until I got that flyer. So yeah.
So how?
98, I think. I want to say 97. That's how I first got into. I got into SCCW with Dynamite D, Jack Stud, and Cincinnati Red were, I think, the guys. And Damian Steele. He wasn't Damian Steele yet. Let me go back. Nick Fisher. I actually went to the Cauliflower Alley Club when they were out here in LA when they were doing Luthez night, right? When they used to do it at some old broken down hotel here in LA. And that's where I met Nick Fisher, White Trash Johnny Webb, Devin Kleinrock. I forgot some of the other guys. Dave Geck, Mace, or Kid Chaos or Chaos One or something. There was a few guys that had, made their names, and I got to hang out with them the first time. We're watching Luthez and Pat Patterson and Vern Gagne, honor Luthez. So that was my first official wrestling moment, as a new guy.
Oh.
So what was your training like under Dynamite D?
Okay, well, Dynamite D ran the school, but I got most of my training, like I said, from Damian Steele, Nick Fisher. It was, you know what? I'll give you, when I see like Tough Enough, or I see certain people with wrestling programs, how they, I didn't like what I saw from Stu Hart. Where they're cranking on their neck, oh, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this.
Yeah.
I was like, no, you can't, and you're not going to do that to me. I'm going to learn how to run the ropes. I'm going to learn how to bump. I'm going to learn how to, work a spot, all this thing. And frankly, none of those guys tried to pull that nonsense with me. Like, oh, we're shooters, no. I treated them with respect. I didn't try to act like, well, I'm a stage fighter, so I can do all. No, I was under no pretense. They didn't try to pull that nonsense out, that fake tough guy shit that is so prevalent in pro wrestling training. There's so many people acting like they're really legitimate tough guys, and fails to realize that, oh, they're letting you hit you, they're letting them hit you, you're letting them hit you, and they're letting you turn around. You're not. Dynamite D was a fantastic trainer. Nick Fisher was a fantastic trainer. They were very plain. This is how it's done. Do it. And I'll never forget, that when they had all the new guys up, what's his name? Paul Logan X. Remember Logan X?
Yeah.
He was in that same class with me. There was like 5 of us. And he had a friend that came. So there was 5 of us that started on the same day, and he was one of them. And they asked us all, who do you like to watch? What wrestler do you like to be like? Or what wrestler is your favorite to watch? And of course, Chris Benoit. Who's the other one? Eddie Guerrero. They all said that when they got to me. Who do you like to watch? I'm like, oh, I like Dean Malenko. Right? Like, you like Dean Malenko? So, they kind of got an idea that I had more of a shooter. I didn't want to be a shooter gimmick, but I like the stuff that those types of wrestlers.
Yeah.
Like Ricky Steamboat and things like that. So the wrestling training was very matter of fact. This is how you do a clothesline. This is how you take a clothesline. This is how you do a drop kick. This is how you take a drop kick. This is how you bump. This is how you hit the rope. None of this nonsense, right? So it was easy to learn in that environment, right? It wasn't an ego fest. It wasn't like they weren't trying to work me, right? And I wasn't trying to expose the business. They actually closed that spot in Simi Valley and didn't have a place to put the rig. I had a dojo that was just big enough to fit that wrestling ring in, right? So I'm like, well, how about this, guys? I know you guys are all the way up in Simi Valley. I'm down here in, where was it? It was Huntington Beach or Fountain Valley? I was down there. It was, I think it was Huntington Beach. Why don't you guys set up here? That way I don't have to drive to Simi Valley. And you guys can have a place, and I won't charge you rent, just put the ring. And we'll use the ring here. And so, we picked up the ring, moved it down here, and for about a year, I still kept training. We started doing classes there, so it was easy for me. And I was able to run the ropes every day, bump every day. And when they did classes on Sundays and Mondays, I was getting on the classes. So I had a very unique opportunity to learn very quickly from guys who were really willing to teach and not trying to be heroes.
Yeah.
Next question.
Well, around this time, I believe you met Mr. Kloss here. Tell us about how you guys met.
All right. Well, here's the neat thing about Kris Kloss and John Della O. When I first saw him, was it UCLA? Was UCLA first or was Fountain Valley first, Kris?
I want to say Fountain Valley would have been first. However, I have more memories of us meeting, and there's pictures of you and I at UCLA that were in some newsletter. And that was, of course, Honky Tonk Man, Yokozuna. I think that was the last ever. If I think I remember correctly, that was the final SCCW event, if I remember.
Yeah, that was the last one under that name, SCCW. It was cool because I used to tell people, I go, watch this kid, right? Nervous as hell, doing this as he's doing, your next match, right? And I go, man, he sounds just like Howard Finkel, right? Was that your intent, Kris? I've been meant to you for years. Did you try to sound like Howard Finkel?
Yeah, I did. I always was told, oh my gosh, in school, hey man, you sound like it. I would do that announcements in class and in the schoolyard, and people couldn't believe it. And then when I met Patrick Hernandez, I did it for him. He goes, oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah, because I asked him, do you guys need a ring announcer? A few shows before that. And he said, absolutely. Because I had already hung out with them a little bit at Slammers, but but then Dynamite D broke off from Vern. So it was just weird. I didn't know where to go. And then when I met up back with Pat, he said, yeah, we need a ring announcer. You're hired. And I said, great. What do you want me to do? I goes, see that railing and those turnbuckles? Take it to that truck. So that's where I learned, like, okay, this is how you work in wrestling, and then.
Well, you know what? And here's the thing, I own the show, right? I still pick up those turnbuckles and that ring post and get it on the truck when we're taking our show somewhere, right? That's something that's been lost, and there's a group of people going around telling these other wrestlers, oh no, you've already paid your dues. You don't have to help them with the ring. You don't have to help them set up the ring. You don't have to help them tear it down. And that's just not true, right?
No.
No one ever gets done paying their dues. I mean, I knew Samoa Joe. I worked with I didn't work John Cena, but I worked on the same shows as John Cena. They didn't have that attitude. Samoa Joe, because he was the biggest and strongest, would carry the ring post by himself. There's people in this game right now. I mean, there's a group that just threw another entity under the bus because their announcer wasn't a pro or whatever. I don't know. I just started talking about it. I'm like, you guys, that mentality of constantly sticking it to anyone that you are not is what's really limited the scene down here. Right? One group of people think that they should be the dominant force so they're going to try to shit on everyone else who's not with them. And so, you know, it kind of drags everything down. And Kris, you can appreciate you remember when SCCW turned to XPW? You remember the division between, you know, the guys who went with and went without? That was my first experience with online fighting. You know what I mean? Remember the message boards and all that?
Oh, yes. SoCal Uncensored and all that.
Well, no, not those lowlights. Do you remember, okay, when SCCW, they said, hey, we're going to go and we're going to be this, right? With Kevin Kleinrock and Patrick and all them. We're going with Rob Black. And, you know, and for me, I was like, no, I'm not. I have a 4-year-old daughter. You know, I can't be around the whole porn thing. You know, if I was 22 instead of 29, maybe I could have, right? But no, I had a kid and I had a school, right? And I had a different type of reputation that I couldn't. I mean, and back then, you know, porn was still a secret, kind of, right? Because you couldn't just get it online. You had to go to that one part in the video store and, you know, kind of secretly hand it over. So in that respect, I was like, no, I mean, I like all those guys. I like Homeless Jimmy. I like White Trash Johnny Wood. I have tons of respect for Damien Steele. And if you want to go that route, of course, go that route. You could be the West Coast ECW, and who knows where you could be a house. If people wanted to be stars, they wanted to be famous. They weren't. Me, it didn't matter. I just wanted to wrestle, you know, locally and maybe, you know, bring a few more people into my dojo. And kind of build what the UIWA was, which was the offshoot, the splinter group, if you will, from SCCW, or, you know, and then so XPW became this juggernaut out here. I'll never forget the first time, because they took the ring out of my dojo to put it in Rob Black's studio so that they could.
Oh.
All right. So
that's right.
Well, right. So
that's right.
The XPW's ring was the ring that I had in my dojo that we had talked about. And I remember, okay, I'm going to practice. I go there, and you got to be buzzed in, and you know, there's these stacks back then. Like I said, this was the late '90s, so there was two kinds of porn: CD porn and VHS porn. And so, like, I would walk by these stacks of VHS porn, and then in one room you can hear them editing. I was never there when they were actually filming. But you know, and you know, so I was like, it made me uncomfortable. You know, I'm not certainly saying, oh, porn, shame on. I'm just saying that wasn't mine.
Right.
And I was still, MMA was starting to grow at the time, and I was fighting a little more regularly. So the ring was out of my studio. We were starting to go to like King of the Cage, and you know, there was this thing in San Pedro called Cage Combat that we were fighting every month. So I kind of did a left turn from wrestling, at least as a participant, right? Right around when XPW was going, I actually went north to Canada, out in British Columbia, and actually wrestled up there a little bit. That was really cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I don't know. Are you familiar with the product up there at all? Either one of you?
Was that the promotion that Michelle Starr ran?
No, the guy who ran it was named Timothy Flowers.
Okay, I've heard the name Timothy Flowers.
Yeah, Timothy Flowers. Here's the interesting thing about the indie scene up there, right? So you would go to one of Timothy Flowers' show in a place called Cloverdale. Ever heard of Cloverdale? No, huh? Yeah, neither did I. Anyway, we go to Cloverdale. They set up the ring. 500 people at that AgRec center, agricultural recreational center.
Wow.
For an indie show, right? This was during the Monday Night Wars too. So wrestling was red hot. But he was drawing 500 people to wrestling. You know, and there were Bad News Allen was like an announcer, like he was involved. He wasn't wrestling, but that was the only name that was, you know, so they were relying on people from, you know, making their way back from WWF or WCW. These were just local indie guys in a jamming scene. And it was so much a throwback, because in that town, if you would go to, say, the deli, there was a poster with Tim Flowers and his wrestlers on it. You go to the gas station, there's one there. You go to the barber shop, you know, you just everywhere you go, you see flyers sitting on things. So they really did the
Yeah.
That's why they drew 500 people. And you do the footwork around here, you're gonna get sunburned, and it's really hard to draw people, through the flyers, through the internet. So you got to really exhaust everything. But so yeah, there's 500 people up there for like an 8-match show, and the crowd was red hot, and they were, the crowd was actually following the storyline. This was, I don't want to say free internet, but free everything on the internet, right? I mean, you had to really have a nice computer to get online, right? And so, people were actually following the storylines, and it was just a really, really cool throwback to what wrestling must have been like in the territory days.
Yeah.
Now, not to backtrack too much, but were you ever approached by XPW on any level?
Well, right. I had, I knew Kevin and Patrick and them, and basically what had happened was we had this meeting at, I want to say it's Patrick's house. It might have been Kevin's house.
Yeah, it's Patrick's house.
Yeah. And they said, okay, guys, this is what's going to happen. We're going to, if I remember right, if I'm wrong, Kris, you can correct me.
Okay.
Some of the guys that were there can correct me. But as I remember it, they said, look, we have this investor from back east. He's going to come out here, and we're going to change the name of it, OCCW, and we're going to follow it. We're going to flip the script, all right? And we're going to have a big money West Coast indie promotion. And the caveat to that, gentlemen, is that you can't wrestle for anybody else. Right? You can't wrestle, we are exclusivity contract, right? For me, being a bit older than the other guys on the roster, I was like, well, I mean, it's not a thing yet. You can't commit to something that isn't quite there yet. I hadn't wrestled but 1 or 2 matches thus far, so I'm going to try to get in as many matches with it. There was a lot. There was WPW. There was UPW. There was there was tons of indie outlets out here that you wrestle if you were good enough. And they're all gone now, every last one of them. But at the time, because it was the Monday Night Wars and wrestling was at a real, you could wrestle twice a weekend, 3 times a weekend, right, without even really trying, right?
Right.
And so I wanted to get in the shows. I wanted to be good enough to wrestle on those shows. I didn't want to wait to see if this guy from back east was going to invest enough money and put him in a big enough show where it would be, you could make enough money working just for him, blah, blah, blah. You see what I'm saying? It didn't register with me. And so for me, I was like, well, and plus I don't want to be, was I approached? Your question was, why was I approached? They basically told all of us, either you're with us completely, you don't wrestle for anybody else, or you go and wrestle for other people and you're done. So I was like, well, you guys are great. Kevin Kleinrock was always seemed smarter than his years. Patrick Hernandez was a prince of a man. And all those other wrestlers, Jimmy, Damian Steele, White Trash, they were always very good to me. So I wish them luck, and I went on my own. I went with these other guys, Dave Geck, Johnny Hemp, even Cincinnati Red. He's like, and Jack Stud and all that. I figured they'd been around in the wrestling game a little bit longer than I, so I'm going to kind of watch them and see what they do. And you know what? You can't say it was the right decision. You can't say it was the wrong decision, because XPW kind of blew up, didn't it? And it's still, they talk about it today, right? They do.
Yeah, absolutely.
They do documentaries about it today. I'm sure Kris has probably been on some of them. So yeah, it did get bigger, and then it went away, and it's just back now. I understand it's back now. So did I make the right decision? In my mind, I did, yes, because I wasn't going to make. Plus, I didn't want to get stuck with a weird gimmick, like some of the gimmicks they gave us. I could just picture me in my early 20s, with a full head of hair, getting some sort of chicken boy gimmick, like, oh, you're going to be, the sweet guy or something like that. I just wasn't going to do it. So it was the decision that I made, and it wasn't a wrong decision at all, because I got to wrestle a lot. I made a lot of friends, and I'm still in that wrestling business. And I don't regret what I did. And I certainly, if given the chance to do it again, I wouldn't go with XPW just because that's not I don't like hardcore stuff. I really I didn't like ECW very much. And the only reason why I watched the XPW show was to see my friends watch. Yeah. That makes sense? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you were new at the time, a rookie. You only had a couple matches under your belt, so it's like you wanted to go out there and gain experience, which you.
Exactly. And it was way up in Chatsworth, where everything was going on, and I lived down in Santa Margarita, Rancho Santa Margarita. So, I can hit the shows in Anaheim and Garden Grove and Westminster, but waiting to go to, Kris, from the time they made that announcement to the time they actually put on their first show, how long was that? Was it over a year?
That was roughly 1 year, because that was summer of '98. We met at Patrick's. I don't know exactly when, but it was probably like just a tad over 1 year, because the first show was July 31st of '99. So I want to say we were at Pat's house like June or July of '98. So it was a year out.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it was a year out. I remember that, signing that, like, wow, this is exciting. But then on the other side of the coin, it was that little, so I can't do anything with anyone else. I can't do anything for about a year. Like, ooh, like that. There was a little bit of hesitation. But I think, like you said, it was, wow, this investor's coming in. Whoa, this. And, everyone just kind of like saw WWF in their heads,
How old were you?
Well, when the first show started, I was 23, so I was 22 at that time.
Okay, so the idea of meeting porn stars was still kind of a neat idea.
Yeah. And I was single.
And then you met him, and then you were like,
No, it was like anybody that wants, to go away to college, just like this. That was this times 10,
Yeah.
Right.
And they did well, right? They did well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What shut them down? I don't watch any of the Dark Side of the Rings or anything like that. I don't know exactly.
It was a combination of Rob going after the federal government. That was with the whole porn thing. He was on, what was it, 60 Minutes or 2020, and
I did
literally challenged them, and they went after him. And that, and a lot of once we went back east, he purchased the old ECW arena. I think we should have just leased it out, rented it out, but that was a big blow. I remember hearing financially, and just there were some financial moves, and also again all the controversy going on with his porn company. Also, too, I've talked about this before. When we started in '99, 2000, it was a different feeling than it was when the last 2 years of 02, 03, because it lasted from '99 to 03. The wrestling business, I think, changed. One thing I think people leave out, like you said, that show in Canada, when XPW started, a big advantage we had was that the industry was red hot. So when we started, we had the money behind us, but in '99, for example, we brought in Big Dick Dudley and John Cronus. That was it as far as big names to get 1,000, 1,200 people. In 2003, fast forward, you needed Psychosis, you needed Shane Douglas, you needed Jerry Lynn, you needed Super Crazy, you needed X-Pac, you needed all these stars to get that same size crowd now. So the business had dwindled, the leaps and the peaks and valleys that wrestling goes in. That peak of '99, 2000, it was strong in 2002 and 3, but not as strong, and you felt that. So I think that's part of it too that gets overlooked. Again, we had just advantages of starting when the business was hot, also having basically a movie studio. Yeah, it's porn, but it's a movie studio. We had all those advantages, technological, television studio-like advantages with the lighting, the sound, the editing. We had all those advantages, and being in Los Angeles, if this was a league that started in Topeka, Kansas, it wouldn't be what it was, so those were some advantages we had. But yeah, I think part of it was Rob's stuff going on financially with the porn company, but I think a lot of it that gets overlooked is the business wasn't as strong then for Rob to kind of break through his problems, because I got this strong company I think the industry as a whole was switching, combined with Rob's personal issues.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that was that just like ECW, when your selling point is that extreme thing,
Yeah.
how long can you sell the extreme extremity? No,
Right.
the extremeness of it, right? How before like okay, you have an exploding ring match, and then you have this. At some point, that's one of the things that some of these people were smart about, even WWE, in that they just put on a wrestling match. The star of the show is that ring, right? That's the star of the show. And I think maybe if there was some way, because I remember saying this to people, why don't they just rein it in and put on wrestling matches? Maybe have one, but it just kept getting thrown off of the ceiling of friggin' the sports arena and who was it? Masai getting his head busted open real bad, or no, that was Joey Chaos, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
I mean, it was like it's just getting out of hand, and people are going to want to see more, and you can't ultimately you can't give them. There's going to be a limit to what you can do,
Right.
That's why they don't, add barbed wire in the UFC or get their hands in glass in boxing, right? Because you can't do it.
Don't give them any ideas now, John. Someone might be watching this.
There you go. But now they're coming back. Is that right? The XPW is coming back?
They've been back for a while. I don't know the status on everything. I heard they have a show coming up in September, but they've kind of gone to obscurity.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're not in it? You're not involved with it at all, Kris?
No, I was. It came back in November of 21. There's a show out in New York. Went out for that. And then he kind of relocated back to LA, so I was doing those. Then we just kind of, if all I'll say is we had a disagreement, so we chose to go. I just chose to go this way, and I gave it a shot. You know what I mean? I gave it the benefit of the doubt, but I'm as far as now, never say never in wrestling, but no, yeah, yeah.
Funny how money has a way of doing it. I'm not going to say that's what it was, and I'm not saying that you are, but it's usually the root of all problems.
There's a lot of all of the above with it that get into when I see you next.
Yeah. Well, you are certainly one of the highlights of that era of XPW. And,
well, thank you very much.
You can't. That's like if a person. Now, think about this. All right, Michael Buffer, Bruce Buffer, Jimmy Lennon, Howard Finkel. Those guys are as big a star as just about almost any of the guys that they've announced, right? Chris Kloss will fit in that category with the wrestling team. So, and this man is unflappable, all right? So, okay, I don't know, we talked about this earlier, but I wanted to say something about it on the air. I do the indie shows here at the dojo, and one gentleman said, hey, John, I have an idea for a match. My friends are having a baby. I want to do a gender reveal match where one guy in pink, represents the girl, and the one guy in blue represents the boy. And, whoever wins the match, that's going to be the gender of the baby. I'm like, that's brilliant. I can't believe, Joseph Saint of DCW or DCF fame, that was his idea. Someone, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, you can put that match on my show, right? And so it was Chris's first show for us. He walks in today and go, hey, the first match we got is a gender reveal match. Congratulations, run with it. And run with it he did. It was fantastic. So there was a lot of people who came to this gender reveal party that were not wrestling. Would you say that's a fair show? I'm like, oh man. I even said to them, I go, hey, how do you like lowbrow entertainment? Because that's what you're gonna get. And they were like, well, I don't know. Like these were not like the cool older grannies. These were grannies that preferred to be called grandmother. That were at the show, right? Call me grandmother, not granny or grandma, right? So there were these type of people at the show, and I think that Chris's calling of that match was probably, I don't want to say the highlight of the match. The highlight of the match is the match, but was the thing that kept those people here after the gender reveal match. Right?
Oh wow! Okay.
After that. So it was pretty cool, and I don't know. That's one of the more bizarre matches, I think.
Yeah, it was.
But
And, oh,
my point was he's unflappable.
yeah. OCCW was the first to ever do a gender reveal match. So yeah, the person in pink, if they won, it would have been a girl, and the person in blue won, it would have been a boy. And I think it was a boy, right?
Yeah, well, that was the best part of it when
Yeah, right.
and
And
it's the boy. It was
yeah,
perfect. I was
and
like,
then
that is
somehow
really cool.
the shoulders getting pinned changed the frequency and the chemical imbalance in the woman that was sitting ringside, and then that
Hey, wrestling can do a lot of things. Wrestling can do a lot
right,
of
right.
Absolutely.
That was the first, yeah.
You keep bringing up Tim Fisher, Damian Steele, who, was one of my favorites when I found out about the Southern California independent scene. Before we move on to UIWA, tell us a little bit about Tim Fisher.
Well, he and I met, like I was talking about, the night at the Cauliflower Alley Club. And we came to find out we both lived in Tustin at the time. And so when I would go to train, practice up in Van Nuys, Simi Valley. I said Van Nuys, but it was Simi Valley. I get this from stuff. I've actually wound up in one city while supposing to do the other. Anyway, Simi Valley. So he would ride with me. We would carpool, and we got to know each other really well. And he was a good friend. And he helped me, like when I put the ring in my dojo in Huntington. He was there because it was close to him and Tustin, and so we got to be pretty good friends. We would watch, we'd watch the fights together. We'd watch wrestling together. We got to be really good friends, and kind of lost touch. Got invited to his wedding. Didn't make it because I was stuck in traffic trying to get to Big Bear. But we kind of lost touch when we had that brand split. Is that what you call it? When UIWA became UIWA and XPW became XPW. He went that direction, and I went, this direction. So he was so valuable to me. As this is what you don't act tough when this happens. He would give me all kinds of sage advice that I thought was that really helped me out in the wrestling scene at the time. He told me who was doing what was right. For the most part, he was right, and I know that he was a little bit older than me, so he was getting to the point where this wrestling scene either it's going to happen for you or it's not, right? So which explains why he went with XPW and that opportunity. And it afforded him some opportunities, right? He was the first camp. He got to wrestle guys like Shane Douglas and Chris Candido, I think. And so, I lost touch with him after a little while. I ran into him at the stores in Huntington Beach a couple times, and actually watched the UFC fight with him. I get the idea that things didn't exactly go real well for him. I don't know. Last I heard, he was on. So if you're out there,
he did have quite a career.
What's that?
He did have quite the career in Puerto Rico. I know he was there on and off for, I want to say, like 4 or 5 years.
That's right. Yeah, he was. That's right. I remember seeing him in Puerto Rico. I don't know what he's up to. Has either of you heard or talked to him lately?
We're trying. We've been trying to get a hold of him. I actually was trying to get a hold of him for my podcast. I know you had one too, John, and I had one, Extreme Memories, and he did reach out, but we lost contact somehow. So, man, if you're out there, Tim, or if anyone knows Tim, please have him get a hold of us. Love to know how he's doing. I want to wish him all the best and hope he's doing well. But yeah, I mean, personally, I thought back in the day, especially when he kind of went from Nick Beat, Daddy O, and even then, but really when he went to the Damian Steele character, he was one of those guys that, when XPW started, we got all these ECW guys. Whoa, these guys are pros. And then we had our guys that were maybe a little greener, let's say, at least television wise. Well, Damian Steele was one of those guys where it's like, wow, this guy already looks like he's been a pro wrestler. He is a pro wrestler. Like, he looked the part, he acted the part as just as well or better, or just at least just as well as all these pros that we brought in. So I always thought that he understood, like, what all you need. You need the ring skills, you need the mic skills, and you need the look, and he had it all.
Absolutely. And you know what? He would match me memory for memory of the old TV show days. Whether it was the NWA, the Crockett
Oh,
promotion, and
that's cool.
the WCCW, the one in Texas.
Yep.
The aftermags. I read every aftermag. I used to get all three of them every month. And
Yeah.
he could stand right there with me, and remind me
Cool.
to tell you a story about those aftermags. But yeah, so yeah, Nick B, Damian Steele, Tim Fisher, I have nothing but good things to say about, and I just hope that the world is being a little kinder to him, than that.
Absolutely. And he helped create one of the biggest stars. He broke in John Cena in the wrestling business.
Yeah.
So it kind of speaks volumes on him a bit too. I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Not yet, okay? I'm sorry. I can open it for you.
Mm-hmm.
You need something from back there? Oh, okay. Open the door. Anyway, sorry. They're putting on a show right here today, so I'm coming at you.
As you guys can see, John De La O, a very busy man here at the John De La O Jiu-Jitsu Training Center. Once again, this is the Wrestling with Reality podcast. Kris, Kloss, Eric Melikian. John De La O is broadcasting from the John De La O Jiu-Jitsu Center. You can see behind him the two banners, and to John's left, a ton of show flyers on the wall right there. Just some of the shows that have been through the center, and there's continuous shows that are being held at the John De La O Jiu-Jitsu Training Center. And, speaking of there it is right there. I mean, man, it's a beautiful facility, pro wrestling, mixed martial arts, and even shows like the one we did last night. We had a mix of all that. We'll get to that later. But Eric, before we get there, I know you wanted to ask a couple more questions, I think.
Yeah. Tell us about, you were involved in UIWA when UIWA started, correct?
Awesome.
Tell us about the UIWA Boiler Room, the time frame that took off. I know they were on KJLA briefly, and what happened with that whole deal there?
Okay, so I want to say, actually, okay, so my first matches were at WPW. It was a battle royal in the rain, right? And that's where I met Johnny Hemp, right? And Johnny Hemp had started the UIWA, and he had reached out to two people. And I remember talking with them. Actually, the interesting about Johnny Hemp is that was the first email I had ever received, was an email from Johnny Hemp, saying, hey, I saw you at, Ryan McGonigal is his other name. And he was just a prince of a guy. He was really cool, really down to earth. And so I go, yeah. He goes, why don't you work security for our show? They did a show in I want to say Garden Grove off the 22. It was a bar, and he had us work security. And I go, okay, we'll work security. So they set up in the ring, and I helped him move the ring and helped add security, right? And he goes, where are you wrestling again? I go, well, I only did a couple of shows. I don't know. He goes, well, why don't you work our next show? So we did some shows at the Boys and Girls Club here in Westminster and Garden Grove, some in Port Hueneme, I ran with that. A bunch of places. And the neat thing about him is that he had a penchant for putting together. He was the first person I ever saw actually edit and put together a pro wrestling TV commercial.
Oh, wow.
For a show that we were, just for a show, like a walk-up show. It wasn't even a TV show. Yeah, for the local TV station up in Port Hueneme. And he could do all these really cool things. Doc Marley, I think, was involved at the time as well. And I forgot who some of the other guys were. But he's also, not only did he do all the TV stuff, not only did he wrestle, not only did he do the graphic art stuff, but he also picked up the ring, set the ring up, tore the ring down, put it back on the truck, and on all this. So he was one of the guys who was destined to get burned out on this game, because he did absolutely everything. And slowly came to realize that most people don't want to do a goddamn thing. They just want to show up and wrestle and get paid because they paid their dues, or because wherever they came from tells them so, right? So, but yeah, he makes movies now. Like he makes horror flicks, if I'm not mistaken. And,
Oh, really?
I run into him once in a while. He's a hell of a guy. Always tons of respect for him. But the UIWA, not only was that the first email I ever received, but it was the first online fight I'd ever been witness to. A lot of the guys that didn't go to XCW were getting into it with guys that stayed. Back then, you remember the message boards, right? There was a UIWA message board.
Yeah.
Basically, back then, your website consisted of your logo, where you were going to wrestle, and then the message board. That's what our UIWA was. And the most fun in the world was that message board, because people were just teeing off each other. And you could stay anonymous, give yourself a nickname, and talk all this shit. But everyone knew who was saying what just by the way they spoke. And that was a hell of a time. I mean, we opened the first West Coast dojo, we called it, here, not far from where the dojo is now. Chris, it's just the other side of the train track. We had the ring in there, a brand new ring that he had bought from Johnny Torres, and we put the ring just barely fit inside there, and we were running. That's where Samoa Joe actually got his turn to run the ropes and take a bump. I got that another email I got was from someone asking about, do you guys teach wrestling in that part of town? I'm like, yeah, come on up. He came in, I showed him how to run the ropes, I showed him how to take a bump, and I think how to take a clothesline. I didn't show him how to give one because I wasn't sure I wanted to take a clothesline from a big Samoan dude like that yet. And I'll come back tonight because first class is free. I'll come back. Came back with his money and paid for his first month, and didn't look back. I mean, not only was he training there with us, but he also went and trained with OCCW down in Mission Viejo, where he was coming here on like Mondays and Wednesdays and going there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So he would learn things so fast. I mean, you could probably teach him to code on computing inside a week, and he's one of those very unique guys. And then, I knew he was going to take off. I didn't know he was going to be Samoa Joe, right? But I knew he was going to, get a working wage doing it. But yeah, he became an international star.
Yeah.
So do you know whatever happened with the UIWA, them being on TV, and how that whole thing fell apart? Because that was a huge thing at the time. I want to say this was late 98, early 99.
Yeah. 99, I went away. I wound up living, remember I told you I moved to Canada in late 99, and I was there till mid-2000. I don't know what happened whilst I was gone, but I remember coming back, and I think Doc Marley had left the scene. I know there was some subterfuge back there. I don't know if it was a money thing. Usually it's a money thing, right? And then it just slowly kind of flagged away. I know he only did a handful of TV shows though, right? On the Boiler Room. It wasn't a whole season, was it? It's like I want to say 5 or 6 shows.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I've done. Okay, let me tell you something. This is funny you should mention it because I wanted for UIWA to be. We had the idea for it to be what ultimately became Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I remember discussing with Brian. Hey, you know what? There's a TV show. You guys remember Wally George?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. They have a TV studio down there, and they run. This is a TV station that runs out of Orange County. Back then, we thought everything was in LA. I go, we can get in there. If we can get in there, we can have a show every week, and that will totally boost the attendance of our shows. We'll be on right after Wally George, or it didn't matter. It'd be on in the middle of the night. Because back then, wrestling fans would stay up till midnight to watch a wrestling show, right?
Absolutely.
A local wrestling show, especially a local one that can do the wrestling. I'm like, we could do this, and I think he had problems with the guys who were supposed to be helping him. But my idea was basically what Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Okay, you know what I mean? And I was like, damn it, he gave Martinez. Is that his name? Marquez. Dave Marquez. He came up with the idea. I don't know when he came up with it, but he enacted it sometime after we had already had that idea to do it on ADSC, because they had Foreman and they had the K-Rock. So it was literally probably one of the last local independent television station. And
Right.
I go, we can get on there, and we can. That's like something you see in the Midwest and stuff back east, or smaller places. This is exactly what we need, and this is success. We can use this as an hour long or 30-minute long commercial to sell our next show, and people will watch it and people will come. And I don't know what happened with his partners or investors or whatever, but UIWA went away shortly thereafter. And then, I wanted to do the same thing with OCCW. I had the idea and problems with the wrestlers, and then in comes Dave Marquez and turns it into this, national thing. So, but good for Dave Marquez. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure I'm not the only person who had that idea, but he was the one that made it work. He was able to navigate the wrestling waters well enough to make it work.
Boy, yeah, that was a great idea.
I don't know what happened with UIWA. You were saying, I'm sorry?
I said, no, that was a great idea. That would have been pretty cool if that actually took off. You'd have XPW in LA, and then in Orange County, you'd have UIWA. It'd be pretty cool.
And it would have been cool because it was an Orange County thing, right? In Orange County, right? I don't know. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood takes place in Port Hueneme. It was at Port Hueneme, and it's called Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and it comes out of a station in Orange County. So there's a couple of disconnects there, right? My idea was to make it about Orange County so that people could come and see the Orange County product. I've been in Orange County my whole life, right? I've grown up in Orange County. My kids are from Orange County. My business is in Orange County. Everything about me is Orange County. That's why we call it Orange County Championship Wrestling, right? I've always felt like the bastard son of LA, right? Which is why I despise the Angels. What do you mean you despise the Angels? When I was a kid, they were called the California Angels. They didn't claim Orange County. And then when Disney owned it for a little while, they were Anaheim. And now that they're the LA Angels, they won't claim Orange County. Same reason why I didn't like the Rams. I am all about Orange County. And so I thought it would be great for another way for Orange County wrestling to have its own niche, right? And not get bullied by the people who think LA is really where wrestling is.
Wow.
So it was unfortunate that it didn't work out. If I'd had more money, it probably would have worked.
Yeah.
So after UIWA, I came back. I came back from Canada and kind of really got into the MMA scene as it was budding and growing. I let them set up a wrestling ring. It was Battleground Pro Wrestling. You guys ever heard of Battleground Pro Wrestling?
Yes, I worked for them.
And then, so I let them set up the ring, and they were running the show, and of course, not paying the rent on time, ever, in full. But after so I go, hey, you know what? This was before Marquez's thing had started at KDOC. I'm like, we got a ring, we got a dojo, we got a TV station, essentially. All we got to do is set up the cameras. We'll shoot. We shot 4 hours of footage that I wanted to take to KDOC and try to get that. Like, again, this was just before Championship Wrestling from Hollywood started. It was called something else, wasn't it, when it started? Was it always Championship Wrestling from Hollywood?
At the beginning, they called it NWA Championship Wrestling.
Okay, that's right. So we shot all this footage, and then the guy who was supposed to edit it for us just kind of fucked off and didn't do the job we paid him. So there was that, and then the ring broke, and then Foob and Pete refused to fix the ring. And so I'm like, well, get this thing out of here if you're not going to fix it. So the whole wrestling thing kind of collapsed in on itself just because people can't do what they're going to do. And so I'd had it. We put a cage in, like an octagon instead, and we had a boxing ring, and we just went full speed ahead. And then, with the MMA and the fight, and I think when did we go wrestling? I want to say about 11 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. One of my students' moms works at the American Legion post in Midway City here by Garden Grove. He said, hey, John, would you be interested in putting on an MMA show to raise some money for the post? I'm like, well, you can't just put on an MMA show. It's you got to deal with the state athletic commission. At the time, there was no.
Yeah.
And I go, you got to see what, it's a huge investment. There's no way we're going to be able to raise money. We'll probably lose money that way. He goes, well, how about a jiu-jitsu tournament? Can you put on a jiu-jitsu tournament? I'm like, I really don't want to think that. I know some pro wrestlers. We could probably do a pro wrestling show. She goes, would that draw? I go, well, we'll see, right? So I contacted all my old pro wrestling friends, guys like Roadhouse and Bobby and guys like that. And we put the show together. We put I go, okay, we're going to make it a gimmick the hell out of it. We're going to make it a battle over the top rope battle royal, right? Oh, over the top rope battle royal. That's amazing, right? So, and it worked. We rented a ring from, I forgot who. He's 2 hours late bringing the ring. You want to talk about someone losing their mind, right? Where the hell is the goddamn ring, right? So we set up and we filled that place. There was, okay, we had 200 chairs and it was standing room only. You know, everybody from the post came, all the local wrestling fans came, and this was just a favor to a friend. I wasn't trying to start a league or a federation or anything like that. And so the place was full for Battle Royal. It was exciting, and it was guys that it wasn't the mainstream guys that were in the guys who were on top of the game. It was just people that I knew who wrestled. When you guys want to do the show, we would put together, and they made a ton of money. The post, everyone got paid pretty good. The bar made money. The concessions, everybody did real well. And they said, when can you do it again? I'm like, whoa, I'm not. I did want to do that OCCW, so that's really where it started. It started as a favor to a friend, as a fundraiser, and after a while, I go, well, you know what? We can put the ring in the dojo, like we had back in the past, and maybe we'll have a pro wrestling class, and then that's gone. And then we've been putting on shows for going on our 11th year now as OCCW, and we put on more shows than anybody but Jesse Hernandez. I think Jesse Hernandez is the only guy in California who's done more pro wrestling shows.
Yeah.
There's a few guys that have done lucha libre shows, but those are completely different animals. And it's like comparing punk rock to hip hop, really, honestly. And I'm not putting down lucha at all. I'm just saying they're very different. They're very different culturally. They're very different structurally. The only real similarity is they're in the ring. So yeah, so about 11 years, OCCW's been putting on regular shows, and we didn't stop during the pandemic, right? You know, we
that's awesome.
Shows with no crowds, right? And we would put on shows.
That's great.
That's great.
We did not stop. We did not buy into all the fear and hate mongering.
Awesome.
It's very, very rampant through the local indie scene, right? And I told the boys, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. They're like, dude, I've been sitting in my house for 6 months. I got to do something, right? And it's funny too, because if you look at that first show we did, everyone was fun. It was hilarious. And there were segments of business, the online bullies, right, that were trying to bury us for it. And now they look pretty stupid, but they've moved past it, So and they are stupid.
That's right.
So
yeah.
We did not stop. We slowed down during the pandemic, certainly. But we didn't stop, we won't stop, and we're gonna keep going until I find a nice beach to retire.
Beautiful.
And it's cool because now in the last 6 months we got Kris Kloss back, right? I'm talking with Eric, who I haven't seen in eons. Right?
Yeah, it's been 12 years.
Yeah, so it's coming full circle. It really is.
Yeah.
It's coming full circle. And the best part about it is we are slowly eliminating the negativity. I think I told Kris, I watched the DNC. I watched both the Republican National Convention and the DNC. And when I was watching the DNC, I was doing this, right? And regardless of political affiliation, right? We won't go into my political affiliation. But I was like, hey, this is a pretty jamming song. Oh, I know this song. And when they did New Jersey, they did Born in the USA and all that shit that I love. And so I was like, wow, this is very exciting. This is very positive. This is very upbeat, right? And that's what the show felt like last night. And ever since Kris came on, it felt like that. So I want our shows to be upbeat and positive and a good time. I don't want it to be a bloodletting, like bloodthirst. I don't want to get the crowd, get a bloodthirsty crowd. I want a crowd to be hopping and enjoying.
Yeah.
I mean, I want it to be a bright thing. I don't want darkness as a selling point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's right.
Because there are shows that are more about darkness and blood, and the wrestlers need the angel of death and soul stealer and shit like that. And I don't want that to come across. I tell the guys, stop wearing black, start wearing bright colors, things like that.
Yeah.
And we still don't mix them both. I think wrestling should be a little bit more uplifting. I think
That's
everything should be a little more uplifting.
and that's the era we grew up in for
Yeah.
wrestling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Eric, do you have something else? Because I'd like to, before we close out, talk a little bit about OCCW. Or do you have one more thing before we go?
Just one more thing. I know we were talking a little off air. You still wrestling at all? What's your status with everything?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm 54 years old, and I started wrestling in 1997. My last match was, I want to say, about 8 months ago. It was a real simple match. It was between two older guys, me and Fabi, right? We wrestled each other 1,000 times, right? There was nothing off the top rope. I did a very simple Russian leg sweep. I was doing anything else. Whoa! When I opened my eyes again, what seemed like eons later, I could not move. I could barely breathe. I could barely hear, and all I heard was like a ringing in my ears, right? You've had your leg fall asleep like at the movies or something, or when you on your arm falls asleep.
Yeah.
My whole body felt like
Whoa.
I don't know. It was probably not very long, but it seemed like an eternity. I thought I was paralyzed. I could not move. I could barely breathe. And I was saying to the referee, Damon, I can't move. Tell Fabi to come cover me. Because the match wasn't. Tell Fabi to come cover me. I can't move. He goes, that's not the finish. And I'm like, I can't move. I can't move. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, but it's coming out. The crowd's loud. He said, what? I go, tell Fabi. So he's going over there. He goes to Fabi. He goes, Fabi, you got to cover him. That's not how the match goes. If he's hurt, you got to cover him. So Fabi's supposed to be all screwed up from the leg sweep. He can barely move. I'm slowly getting feeling back into my toes, into my fingers. I'm like, you got to cover him. We got to take him home. He's hurt. And Fabi, crawls over to me. I'm starting to be able to move my legs a little bit, my arms, and I'm starting to hear. I can breathe regularly. Fabi comes over and like throws his arm on me, like Stone Cold Steve Austin style, with Owen Hart.
Yeah.
Puts his arm over me. Damon counts 1, 2, and I kick out.
Oh.
I kick out. Right? I'm like, I can move again. I did some half-fast elbow drop and went up covering spot. But my point is that it was a very simple bump. It was a friggin' Russian leg. It was my own bump. I didn't even get, and I'm hurt. And it was, I don't ever want to be that scared again. I thought I was paralyzed for whatever, 10, 15 seconds. I thought someone else was going to be wiping my ass and brushing my teeth. And I didn't want that. So I've been I don't have a good reason to get in the ring anymore. No one pays money to come see me that, all right? So I don't know. I haven't taken a bump since. So I figure I might have gotten off lucky and not pushed it. All the fights in the cage and then, all the wrestling matches, maybe it's time to realize that I'm human, or at least half human. So, yeah. So your question was again? Sorry.
Oh, just your status on wrestling. Yeah. Yourself. Just status on wrestling yourself.
Yeah. So I'm probably not going to wrestle anytime.
Then again, you couldn't move and you did kick out, so who knows?
Yeah.
That's a testimonial to my ego. Right? Like,
Or maybe you'll have one more match. Maybe you'll wrestle Samoa Joe, or maybe somebody from your past that,
Man, I couldn't keep up with someone. Plus, I couldn't afford to pay him whatever it is he charges to wrestle now. Right? So I haven't seen him in a long time. I haven't talked to him for a long time. Is he still in? Is he in AEW?
I believe he is. I think he works for Ring of Honor, their brand there.
He was perfect for Ring of Honor. I mean, he could have really taken that up all the way, right? It's too bad what happened to Ring of Honor. I would have liked to have seen him be, something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, John, as always, man, it's great chatting with you, man. Great seeing you. But before we go, you're maybe on hiatus right now yourself in the ring, but definitely not on hiatus with what you're doing. We just had a show last night, like I said before at the top of the broadcast here. A great show. It's been a this has been the fight rounds of OCCW the month of August. We've had Fight Fest round 1, Fight Fest round 2. Last night was Fight Fest round 3. Next week is Fight Fest round 4. But aside from that, OCCW is putting on banger shows on a regular basis. And right there where you are, the John De La O Jiu-Jitsu Center. Talk a little bit about, and I've been doing the play-by-play. It's been great to be back with you, my friend. We've been, like I said, we met back in the day. We took our separate roads, and now it's kind of like come full circle. It's pretty cool. Eric too, all of us reconnecting. But talk a little bit about, first off, you are in Stanton, California, not too far from like Knott's Berry Farm, Buena Park, kind of.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and you have your own facility there for the jiu-jitsu, but it is also the home of OCCW Orange County Championship Wrestling shows that you have sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, sometimes bi-monthly. Tell us a little bit about where you guys exactly are located, your address, how we can get a hold of you, your social media presence, and OCCW at the John De La O Jiu-Jitsu Center.
So thanks, Chris. That
Yep.
was really good. I appreciate that because I would have forgotten a lot.
You got it.
You can follow OCCW Pro Dojo on Instagram and Facebook. You can follow OCCW just OCCW on Facebook. You can follow John De La O on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not on Twitter, or what's the other one, X, or are they the same one?
Same.
We have shows here every Saturday at 7 p.m. Right now it's 7 p.m. When it gets a little colder out, like we'll probably start at 6. Every Saturday evening, tickets are $20. Fight Fest 4 will be this Saturday at 7 p.m. Doors open at 6:30. It's a safe family show, so you can bring your grandma, your tia Toncha, and her 12 kids, and whoever you want. It's a good time. We have concessions. We have homemade pizza, home brewed beer. But anyway, we have everything that you would want in an independent show, and a little more. Of course, we have the best wrestlers in California here at Orange County Championship Wrestling. We want to invite you all out. You get to hear and see Kris Kloss. You get to see the likes of Azrael, Rilla Wolf, Ramsey Snow, things of JBD, Richter, and the whole OCCW process.
And you guys are located on Catella. What's the address?
8381 Catella Avenue, Unit J, as in John Jitsu. That is in Stanton, California. If you're not sure where Stanton, California is, it is exactly 100% in the middle between Knott's Berry Farm and Disneyland.
Oh, wow. Okay. Right in the
Smack
middle.
dab in the middle on Catella between Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm.
Now, if anybody wants to enroll in jiu-jitsu classes, how do they go about doing that?
Give me a call at 714-527-1845, 527-1845. We have jiu-jitsu and MMA classes every night of the week here. We have boxing and kickboxing as well. We also have collegiate, amateur, high school wrestling classes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So and it's affordable. You're not going to spend, you're not going to break the bank. And there's not a lot of hidden fees. Make sure you come down. At least first class is free. Try it out, whether it's pro wrestling, MMA, jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, and try it out. We'll take care of you.
Awesome. And Kris, before we close out, plugs for yourself for pro wrestling, auctions.
I'm with just hit me up on Facebook, Kris Kloss, and that's where I'm primarily at. If you are a nonprofit and you need an auctioneer to host your event, please hit me up. Been 10 years experience. And hit me up too if you want to book me, Kris Kloss on Facebook for wrestling shows. KRIS.
Let me just say this: if you want to book someone, I don't know if he speaks Spanish, so maybe not a loser show, but Kris Kloss can call anything from a gender reveal match to a boxing match to a kickboxing match. I'm sure if we had, a turtle race, he'd be able to call that and make it sound exciting.
Absolutely.
So you definitely have my endorsement. hire Kris Kloss. All right.
All right.
You can't go wrong.
So Auctioneer Wrestling, and if any turtle racers out there, let me know. No, thank you, John. I appreciate the compliment, and right back to you, man. I think you guys are doing some wonderful stuff. You guys have a great roster. I mean, really top-notch matches from the bottom to the top of the card. This month has been spectacular. So yeah, we'll be back there Saturday, August 31st, 7 p.m. John De La O Jiu-Jitsu Center, 8381 Catella, right there on in Stanton, California. So John, thank you, man. Really been a lot of fun doing this. Been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
I'm not really camera savvy, so it's a miracle that I was able to get this up on my phone. I appreciate it. Eric, come down to the next show, man. I mean,
absolutely. When I'm in Southern California, the first stop will be OCCW.
Awesome.
Come see me, brother.
Absolutely, I will definitely pay you a visit. Thank you so much.
Take care, fellas. I'm gonna.
All right, guys. Yeah, just once we're out, just the red X. But for John De La O, for Eric Melikian, my name is Kris Kloss. Thank you once again for joining us on the Wrestling with Reality podcast. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Again, share this video. That's how we get most of our views. And give us a like. Subscribe to this channel. John, Eric, myself, so long. Thank you, fans. We'll see you next time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Dude.
Thank you.
Okay, now you said it with this red button here, right?